My name is Dolan Humphreys. I was pastor at Highland Baptist for 21 years. And in those 21 years, we always had a burden or I had a sort of a burden for young people, pregnant and not knowing what to do back then. And this lady right here had much more of a burden than I did. She was always coming to me and in my study, and she'd say, "Preacher, when are we going to do something?" I said, "We will, Nina, we will. It just take a little time, but we'll do that." And I don't know what happens. I guess something happened, but one day she came into my study and I could see that she was a little different. She was burdened for some reason. And she leaned over my desk just a little bit, put her hands on my desk, and very kindly looked at me right in the eye and says, "Preacher, when are we going to do something?" And I pushed back from my desk a little bit, and I thought to myself, well, got to do something here. I said, "Okay, Nina, let's do it." Had it not been for her, I don't know if we would have ever started. And then we had to get a crisis line, because back then it was called the Pregnancy Crisis Center. That's all we dealt with. Very narrow view there. And so it started, the first crisis line was in my house at the dining room table. That's how it all started. And Nina set up folks coming and taking care of things and answering the phones and all of that. And shortly after, she got a 2-room place, and we got the videos from, who was that?
Well, we took some training in Charlotte also. We
went
maybe a Saturday and did some training.
Right.
And as much, I'm Nina Everett, I should stop and say that. As much training as we could get hold of, we did, but I felt very unqualified to do what we were doing.
Well, in a sense, that's good.
Well, it was. And I remember a pastor telling me, if you'll make yourself available, the Lord will gird you. He will give you what you need. And I think that's true, because in the beginning, I'll be the first to say, I felt like I really didn't know what I was doing. But we had a heart for the ministry, and so we did what we knew to do. And the Lord, He has blessed. Could you imagine this center from where we started?
Absolutely. And I recall one thing. You was the one that is stuck in my mind. You wouldn't even think about this, I'm sure, but it's just stuck in my mind, because I asked you one time, I said, "Well, how do you convince them to have the child?" She said, "We don't convince them. What we do is give them all the materials.
Share the
And of
truth.
course, we tell them about abortion and how bad it is. We don't go through the gory details, but we show it. They see a video when life begins and all these things." And I said, "And what happens if they choose to go on and have the abortion?" She said, "We give them hope. We tell them, you can come back here anytime afterwards if you have any problems. We're here for you, and we want you to know that." And a lot of them that had abortions would come back. Some actually chose to not have them, but it was their decision. And that's one thing I really appreciate about her. She didn't try to jam anything down anybody's throat. She just gave them the material and loved them and said, "We're here for you."
I think that was the hardest thing in the beginning, is feeling the responsibility to share the truth. But we didn't have the option of making the choice.
Right.
And that was difficult. But we loved them. And fairly early on had a post-abortion Bible study that happened, and that was successful. When I think about the center and where we started, and I think about the center today, the one thing that rings in my mind is the faithfulness of the Father. Because I could not have imagined this. When we started, pregnancy tests were pretty expensive, and people would come in just for a free pregnancy test. But they're not so expensive anymore, and you offer lots of things. It's wonderful, wonderful what you do. But I just am always reminded the faithfulness of the Father. because
is-
we couldn't have known.
No.
Early on, we had no financing. You remember that?
Yeah.
We'd have one of our first board meetings. We passed a hat because the phone bill was due, and so we put enough money in the hat to pay the phone bill a couple of months. And we had lots of donut sales, lots of donut sales, yard sales.
But you know it was of the Lord. The Lord was in charge of this thing, because I don't ever recall even the thought of maybe we can't continue this.
No,
It never even entered our minds, because the Lord provided, and these kids that went through the training, and then not only those that went through the training, but those that had to go through the pregnancy, and then those that aborted, we were there for them. Hope was always there.
absolutely. That was the one thing we had to offer.
That's right. Hope.
Absolutely, the hope from the Father.
That's it.
So it's been, I was trying to think back once these ladies called and talked with me about some of the stories from the center. And I remember early on, I counseled a woman who had had 6 abortions. It was difficult for me. And she was carrying number 7 and was abortion minded. And in sharing God's truth, she did choose life for her baby. And I was substitute teaching one day, several years later. You ever had tunnel vision? I watched this little girl get her tray, and she came down. I didn't see her face. She sat down. I remember exactly what her lunchbox looked like. She had long brown curls. She was just, I don't even know why I was watching her. I really don't, but I was just kind of mesmerized. She opens her lunchbox and she pulls out a sandwich that's cut out like a teddy bear. My kids were young at the time. I'm thinking, what mom has time to do all that? And then a baggie of grapes and goldfish and everything that's on little. And I was pretty impressed. And she turned around, and it was that little girl that was born to that mother after 6 abortions. So thankful that the Lord gave me a glimpse into the rest of that story.
I remember you sharing that. That's marvelous.
The Lord's been good, and I'm thankful for the work that the staff and the volunteers here do now. I'm so thankful, because through the years, and I was director for a short period of time, I remember him saying, we need somebody to order pregnancy tests. And so it was early on, and I felt like, well, that could be me. I could do that. So, but through the years, and it's been in the care of different people from time to time, and there would be change. I remember times when our volunteers would get scarce, and then God would bring in more hearts and more people that cared. So I'm just thankful.
Yeah.
I think of just the faithfulness of the Father.
Just be thankful to the Lord. And for this place here, this facility here, I'm just absolutely blown away. And you have a mobile unit that goes out.
Who could have imagined that? In our wildest dreams, we couldn't have imagined that.